Level 1. The conscript. The whistle blows at 5 a.m. and you are already awake. You've been awake since 4. Not because you're disciplined, because you're afraid of what happens to the men who aren't on their feet when the whistle blows. You've been here 11 days and you've already seen it happen twice. The consequences are not dramatic. They're methodical. That's worse. You are 17 years old. You are a Jonsadan, a private. The lowest classification in the Korean People's Army, which is the largest military institution in the country you were born into and have never left. Statistically, you never will. You didn't choose this. Nobody here chose this. Choice is not the operating framework of the KPA. The framework is obligation, and the obligation began before you could evaluate it. Your songbun, your family's political classification inherited from your grandparents, is mid-tier. Loyal enough to serve, not connected enough to avoid serving. You report for 10 years. That is the minimum. That is also functionally the rest of your formative life. The camp outside Pyongyang is a grid of concrete and mud. You share a barrack room with 23 men. You receive a uniform that has been worn before you can tell by the shape of the shoulders. You receive a pair of boots that fit well enough. You receive a daily food ration that is less than what your mother packed for your school lunches, and you do not say this to anyone. Training is ideological before it is physical. Every morning begins with 30 minutes of political study. You learn, or rather you demonstrate that you already know the precise formulation of your loyalty to the supreme leader. This is not theology, though it resembles it. It is a technical requirement. The correct words in the correct sequence delivered with the correct expression. Deviation is noticed. Everything is noticed. The physical training is severe by any external standard and normal by the standard of this place. You run with full kit. You practice formations for 12 hours. You learn to handle a rifle that is older than your father and maintain it to inspection standard regardless. You are hungry most of the time. You do not say this either. The currency at this level is invisibility. The men who get noticed get assigned to things. The things you get assigned to at level 1 are not things you want to be assigned to. You learn quickly, perform adequately, never exceptionally, never poorly. Occupy the middle of every formation. Be present and unremarkable. You have a bunkmate named Choi who is from a rural province near the Chinese border. He tells you things quietly at night that you immediately understand are things you cannot acknowledge hearing. About food shortages, about what the border looks like. You listen, you file it, you say nothing. You are 17 years old and you are already learning to manage information as a survival tool. That education will never stop. Level 2, the trained soldier. 2 years in, you are Sangdongbyung, senior private. The rank means almost nothing in the official hierarchy. It means everything inside the barracks. You have 2 years of institutional knowledge that the new men don't have. You know which political officers write reports and which ones accept small gifts in exchange for favorable ones. You know which training exercises are genuinely graded and which ones are theater. You know the 3 men in your unit who have connections outside the base family in the party apparatus, a cousin in the procurement system, and you have cultivated proximity to all 3 without appearing to cultivate anything. This is the level where you learn that the KPA runs on 2 parallel systems simultaneously. The official system ranks orders ideology, the chain of command as described in the political education sessions. The real system, relationships, obligations, contraband information, and the quiet exchange of favors that makes the actual daily life of the Army function. At senior private, you are just beginning to access the second system. You don't control it. You participate in it at its margins. You carry a message for a sergeant who doesn't want to be seen carrying it himself. In return, your food ration is supplemented 3 days that week. You don't ask what the message was. That's also part of the system. You are assigned to a base near the DMZ for 8 months. The proximity to the border is psychologically distinct from anything you experienced in training. You stand watch positions where South Korea is a visible darkness across a line that has more infrastructure, more surveillance, more meaning per square meter than almost any geography on Earth. You watch it and you think carefully briefly in a way you immediately suppress about what exists on the other side. You suppress it because the thought itself is a liability, not a metaphorical one. Political officers conduct what are called ideological health assessments. They are informal, conversational, and they are looking for precisely the kind of thought you just had. You have developed over 2 years a mental habit of suppression so practiced it operates almost automatically. Almost. A soldier in your unit disappears in the fourth month of the DMZ posting. Nobody says why. Nobody asks why. His bunk is reassigned within 48 hours. His name is not spoken after the second day. You understand what happened without being told. You redouble the habit of automatic suppression. You request a transfer to a technical unit. You have mechanical aptitude. This was noted in your initial assessment, and technical units get better rations and less ideological scrutiny because the work requires concentration. The request moves through channels for 4 months, and then it is approved, and you realize for the first time that navigating the system through legitimate channels can produce results. You file that too. Level 3. The Corporal. Byungyang. Corporal. You have charge of 4 men. They are younger than you, and they watch you the way you watched your own senior soldiers in year 1. For temperature, for the unspoken rules for the map of this place that nobody will give them directly. You give them what you were given, enough to survive, not enough to stop needing you. That's not cruelty. That's the structure of how knowledge functions as currency at every level of this institution. And you are participating in the structure because the structure is the environment, and the environment is not negotiable. Your technical unit works on vehicle maintenance for an armored division. The work is real, and it is demanding, and you are good at it, which creates its own kind of leverage. When a vehicle that should take 3 days to repair takes you 1 day, the officer who needed that vehicle notes your name. When a political study session runs late and the sergeant needs someone to cover his maintenance log because the sergeant doesn't know how to do the maintenance log, you cover it. In return, the sergeant looks the other way on 3 things over the following month that are worth significantly more than a log entry. This is the level where the real economy becomes legible to you. Everything in the KPA has a parallel value. A favorable report is worth a kilogram of rice from the supplemental supply approximately. Access to the telephone line for a personal call home is worth a half day of labor performed on someone else's behalf. A bribe to the supply sergeant accesses uniform materials that can be traded outside the base through channels you don't need to understand fully in order to use. You don't participate heavily yet. You are learning the exchange rates. Your family sends you packages twice a year. The packages arrive partially depleted. This is standard, everyone knows this, and what remains is still more than your base allocation. Your mother includes a letter every time that follows a very specific format. Praise for the supreme leader in the first paragraph. Family news in the second, a carefully worded inquiry about your health in the third. The format is not her natural voice. You know her natural voice. This isn't it. The letters are written for the people who read them before you do. You write back in the same format. The distance between the letters you send and the things you would actually say has been widening since year 1, and by now it is total. You have a supervisor, a yungsa, a staff sergeant who has been in the KPA for 18 years and has eyes that have stopped registering surprise at anything. He pulls you aside after a particularly efficient engine repair and tells you that your file has been flagged for NCO candidacy review. He says it the way he says everything, without affect, without implication, and then he goes back to work. You stand with that information for a moment. Then you go back to work too. Level 4. The Sergeant. Yungsa. You run a section of 12 men and a maintenance bay that processes 16 vehicles per month on a good month and 11 on a bad one. The difference between a good month and a bad one is almost never about mechanical factors. It's about supply allocation, about whether the parts request you filed 3 weeks ago has moved through the procurement chain, about the relationship between your unit's political officer and the divisional quartermaster. You manage these relationships now. You have been in the KPA for 6 years. You are 23. You have not been home in 14 months. Your understanding of North Korea as a country exists almost entirely through the lens of the institution you know, its supply chains, its hierarchy, its information flows, its informal economies. The country outside the base is becoming theoretical. At Yungsa, you begin to understand the political officer structure from the inside. Every unit has a politro, a political officer who operates in parallel to the military chain of command. The politro doesn't give tactical orders. He monitors. He conducts ideological assessments. He writes reports that go upward through a channel that bypasses your commanding officer entirely. He is not your enemy if you manage the relationship correctly. He is a mechanism that can be navigated. You navigate it by being visibly, consistently, unremarkably loyal. You lead the morning political study with precision. You never ask questions that imply doubts. You volunteer correct answers. You attend every session your attendance is noted for, and a few it isn't. The Politro writes in his quarterly report that your ideological health is excellent and your influence on unit morale is positive. That report protects you from things you will never fully know it protected you from. You are also running a small-scale operation through the maintenance bay's supply surplus. When parts are allocated at a higher quantity than you need, which happens regularly because the requisition system is blunt, and you've learned to request with that bluntness in mind, the surplus doesn't go back into inventory. It goes to a network of 3 other NCOs who trade it for food supplements, blankets, and twice medicine. The medicine you traded for was for a man in your section with a fever that the base medical facility would not treat quickly enough. You tell yourself, this is why you do it. It is also why you do it. It is not the only reason you do it. The operation clears the equivalent of around 40,000 North Korean won per month in supplemental value, nearly double your official salary. None of it is documented anywhere. You are good at this. That worries you slightly, not enough to stop. Level 5. The Junior Officer. The commission comes after a selection process that takes 8 months and involves 3 separate ideological review boards, 2 physical assessments, and a period of evaluation during which you understand without being told explicitly that everything you say and do is being watched more carefully than usual. You are careful for 8 months. You are commissioned as a SOE second lieutenant. Junior Officer. You are 26. The rank change is a physical experience. The uniform is different. The deference from enlisted men is immediate and total, and that totality is its own kind of disorientation. These are men who were your peers 18 months ago and who now address you with a formality that has an edge of anxiety in it. You were anxious in their position. You remember exactly what it felt like to manage an officer's perception of you. You use that memory now from the other side to manage their management of you. The base allocation changes at officer level. You receive your own sleeping space. You eat in an officer's mess where the food is meaningfully different from the enlisted rations. The caloric gap between officer and enlisted in the KPA is not incidental. It is institutional design. Hunger is a control mechanism. You are no longer subject to it in the same way, and the relief of that is something you cannot acknowledge because acknowledging it would require acknowledging what the men below you are experiencing. You don't acknowledge it. You have a command of 42 men and responsibility for a section of a garrison's operational readiness. You write reports. You conduct assessments. You interface with the Politro at a different level, now not as a subject of monitoring, but as a partial peer in the information architecture of the unit. He shares things with you. He doesn't share with NCOs. You understand that this sharing is itself a form of monitoring. He is evaluating how you handle privileged information, and you handle it with the precise discretion he is testing for. You pass. Your first real test of command authority comes at month 4. A soldier in your unit is caught with a contraband radio receiver, a device that can pick up South Korean broadcasts. The offense is serious. The processing is mandatory, and you are required to participate in the unit criticism session where the soldier is publicly condemned by his peers before being removed from the unit. You conduct the session. You say the required words. You watch the soldier's face while you say them. You learn what your voice sounds like when it doesn't belong to you. Level 6. The Commander. Daiyui. Captain. You command a company, 120 men. You are 31 years old, and you have been inside the KPA for 14 years, and the institution is now more familiar to you than any other context you have ever existed in. At Captain, you sit at the intersection of the operational and the political in a way that lower ranks don't fully access. You have a relationship with the Divisional Party Committee that is not exactly a reporting relationship and not exactly a peer relationship. It is a dependency relationship mutually structured. They need officers who can manage units efficiently and maintain ideological stability. You need their protection and their allocation decisions and their file notations when promotion reviews occur. You understand exactly what you are trading and exactly what you are receiving, and you conduct this exchange with the precision of someone who has been practicing its simpler versions for 14 years. Your company is stationed near Hamhung. The province is less monitored than Pyongyang, which creates both opportunity and exposure. The informal economy here is more developed and more visible than anything you encountered at earlier postings. There are officers in this garrison who are running operations with Chinese traders through the border, not retail-scale operations, but commercial-scale ones. Electronics, metals, the occasional pharmaceutical shipment. You are approached at month 7. The approach is casual. A fellow captain, a man you've assessed as competent and pragmatic and not reckless, invites you to dinner at the officers' club, and in the last 10 minutes of the evening describes an arrangement that would route a portion of your unit's supply allocation through a channel that compensates you at the rate of approximately 1,200 US dollars equivalent per quarter in Chinese yuan, held outside any trackable system. You think about it for 4 days. You say yes, not out of greed. That's what you tell yourself for the first month. The rationalization is that the system requires participation in its informal economy to function at all, and you have been participating since corporal, and this is a difference in degree, not in kind. The rationalization is also mostly true. It is not entirely true. You don't examine the part that isn't. Level 7, the senior officer. Young Ryong, Lieutenant Colonel. You are 38. You have commanded a battalion. You sit on 2 divisional planning committees. You attend quarterly meetings in Pyongyang with officers from across the Army's command structure, and you know by face and by reputation the men who are moving toward the top of the institution and the men who are stalling. You are moving. The currency at this level is information and proximity. Not physical proximity to the supreme leader. That level of access is a different world entirely, but proximity to the decisions that shape resource allocation, promotion, and the survival or destruction of careers, and in this system, sometimes lives. You know things about other officers. Some of what you know was told to you by politros who have assessed you as a reliable node in the information network. Some of what you know you developed yourself through 14 years of watching how men behave when they think they're not being assessed. You hold this knowledge with great care. The wrong disclosure at the wrong moment is fatal in ways that don't always involve physical death. There is a senior officer, a Sojang Young, a brigadier general who has been your patron in the promotion system for the past 4 years. His protection has been instrumental. In exchange, you have been his operational intelligence on 3 matters. He needed visibility into, without official visibility. The relationship is not stated. It is performed through a series of actions and responses that both parties understand and neither acknowledges. He is under review. You become aware of this through a conversation that you were not supposed to be part of, but were not fully excluded from either. You read that ambiguity as deliberate. Someone is informing you that your patron is exposed. They are waiting to see what you do. What you do in the next 2 weeks will determine more about your trajectory than anything since the commission board. You don't contact your patron. You don't distance yourself visibly. You become exactly as present and as absent as you have always been, with an invisibility so precise it is itself a form of communication to the people watching. Your patron is reassigned to a coastal artillery post. He is not arrested. He is diminished. The review found something enough to move him, not enough to destroy him. You assess this outcome as clean, and you feel something about it that you do not permit yourself to name. You are recommended for the next promotion board 6 weeks later. You have no friends at this level. You have no one who knows you. You have allies, and you have leverage, and you have the reputation of a man who is reliable and discreet, and whose ideological record is impeccable across 2 decades. That reputation is the only version of yourself that exists in this institution. You've stopped being certain there's another version outside it. Level 8. The General. Daejeong, General. You are 51 years old. You have been in the Korean People's Army for 34 years. You sit on the National Defense Commission's operational advisory structure. You attend state functions in Pyongyang where you stand in a specific position that reflects a specific status that every person in the room reads exactly and that no visitor from outside the country could parse without a detailed briefing. You have access to information about the real state of the country, the food distribution numbers, the actual military readiness assessments. The internal economic data that bears almost no relationship to the figures published for public or external consumption. You carry this information the way you carry everything, carefully, quietly, with the controlled expression of a man who has spent 34 years practicing controlled expressions. You manage a budget of approximately 340 million US dollars equivalent in allocated defense resources annually. You know the real number and the official number and the number that gets reported upward and the number that gets reported to the Party Oversight Committee, and you know exactly where the differences between these numbers go. You are not stealing. The word doesn't apply at this level. At this level, the informal allocation is the system. You are a node that the system requires. The resources that pass through you and don't reach their official destinations reach other destinations that are also necessary. Some of them reach your accounts held through intermediaries in Macau. Some of them reach operational requirements that the official budget doesn't acknowledge. The line between these is not clear, and you stop trying to draw it somewhere around the rank of colonel. You have a residence in Pyongyang and a compound reserved for senior military leadership. You have a vehicle and a driver and security detail. You have access to imported food to medical care of a quality that the country's general population has never experienced. You have 3 children who are adults now and whose lives are shaped entirely by your status. Their educations, their placements, their futures are all downstream of what you represent in the hierarchy. They are also leverage. You have always known this. Everyone at this level knows it. Your children's fates are partially collateral against your own continued loyalty and usefulness to the structure above you, which is a structure that terminates in one person and one person only. You have met the Supreme Leader 4 times. Each time has been in a group context, a military ceremony, a command briefing, a state function. Each time you have felt the specific particular pressure of being in a room with someone who holds total authority over your existence, and each time you have performed exactly the correct version of yourself for that room, and each time it has worked. So far. There is no security at this level. That is the specific paradox of reaching the top of this system. The higher you climb, the more visible you become, and the more visible you are, the more useful you are to the structure. And the more useful you are to the structure, the more catastrophic your removal would be. And the awareness of potential catastrophic removal is itself a control mechanism more powerful than any that operates at the lower levels. You are not free. You were not free at level 1, and you are not free now. The nature of the constraint has changed completely. The fact of the constraint has not changed at all. You sit in your office at 11 p.m. reviewing a logistics report that contains 3 sets of numbers. You make notations in the margin of the real set. You set it aside. You look at the photograph on your desk, your family at a state resort 7 years ago. Your youngest is 11 in the photograph. He is 18 now and has just been admitted to the military academy. He is beginning. You think about what beginning felt like. The barracks, the whistle at 5 a.m., the careful practice of invisibility, the gradual discovery of the system inside the system, the file of suppressed thoughts that never fully closed. You don't feel nostalgic. You feel something quieter and harder than that. You close the report. You turn off the light. The cycle. Somewhere tonight in a barracks that smells of boot polish and cold concrete, a boy of 17 is already awake before the whistle blows. He is afraid of what happens to the men who aren't ready. He has been here 11 days. He knows almost nothing about how this place actually works. He knows the official version, the hierarchy, the ideology, the words to say in the correct sequence. He doesn't know about the second system. He doesn't know what he'll have to trade to survive it. He doesn't know what it costs to reach the top of it. He doesn't know that the man at the top in an office in Pyongyang right now looking at a photograph in the dark was once exactly where he is. Cold, hungry, invisible, trying to make it to morning. The whistle will blow in 3 hours. He doesn't know yet that it never really stops.